we have here inverse of a composite function. So we have here f of x equals 1 out of x. G is to x mapping to 2x minus 1 out of 3x plus 2. We are told to find the inverse of f, inverse of g, the fork inverse of x, and then golf inverse of what? X. So the first thing we need to do is to write our equation. F of x, we change it from this form to f of x equals 1 out of x. Then our g of x equals 2x minus 1 out of 3x plus 2. So this is what has been given to us, and we are told to find f inverse. So first let's work it f inverse of what? X. Now to find the inverse of any function, which is this one, the first one, all we need to do is to equate that function to y. So your first step is let y, a variable y, be equal to f of x. And what is f of x? F of x is 1 out of x. So our y will give us 1 out of what? X. Our next step is to cross multiply, make the equation linear, and make x the subject. So we can multiply through by x. When I cross multiply here, I'll get xy equals 1. Now make x the subject. So make x equals 1 out of what? Y. Now this x is now standing as the inverse of the function f of x. And to write the inverse of the function f of x, the next step is to interchange y with x. I repeat, to write the inverse of f of x, which we already have, interchange y with x. So therefore, this x becomes our inverse. So we say f inverse of x equals 1 out of this y becomes what? X. And this is what? Our inverse of x, or our f inverse of what? X. And the next question is to find g inverse of what? X. So first we say let y be equal to g of x. G of x is 2x minus 1 out of 3x plus 2. The next step, we learned that we can cross multiply here, or multiply through by 3x plus 2. Cross multiply here, all we have is g inverse of x equals, now when I cross multiply, I'll get y to bracket 3x plus 2, 2x minus 1. So we will expand the bracket, we have 3xy plus 2y equals 2x minus 1. So we want to make x the subject. So I will group like terms. And I want to avoid negatives. So I'll rather bring this one here, take this one to the other side. So I will maintain this one and get 2y plus 1 equals 2x minus 3xy. I can factorize x on the right hand side, getting 2y plus 1 equals x outside 2 minus 3y. Now to make x the subject, I will divide everything by 2 minus 3y, 2 minus 3y. I don't want to write that step, so I'll get 2y plus 1 out of 2 minus 3y will be equal to x. This will cancel. Let me rewrite. Now this becomes the inverse, but as we write the inverse, we interchange. Anywhere we see y, put x there. Anywhere you see y, put x there, and you write it as your what? As your inverse. This is not range and domain. We are not working with range. We are working with what? Inverse of a function. So now, what is the function given to me? G inverse of x will be equal to, this stands for this, 2x plus 1 out of 2 minus 3x. And this becomes your inverse of g of x. The next thing is to solve for f inverse composite g inverse of x, or fork inverse of x. And this is how we write it. It becomes f inverse g inverse of x. If you have not watched composite functions, part 1. Go through the channel and search for this video, composite function part 1. Learn on composite functions, get the basic understanding, and then come back to this video. So now this is written in this form. This means we are substituting the function what g inverse into the function f inverse, and this f inverse is called the outer function. This becomes the inner function. And I said that whatever we have here in this bracket, we assume it as what x. And in the other videos, I said something that in some books or when we read further, we will know that this is also called the input. F inverse input what? This. We know that when during our first calculation, our f inverse of x was equal to 1 out of x. Then our g inverse of x was equal to 2x plus 1, 2 minus 3x. So 2x plus 1, 2 minus 3x. So this is our function. So therefore we can write our f inverse, log inverse of x will be equal to, now we go here, what is our outer function? F inverse. So wherever we see x here, we are putting g inverse of x, everything here. So let me repeat that step. So this becomes 1, which is the f inverse function, and x will contain g inverse. So we have 2x plus 1 out of 2 minus 3x. Now this becomes basic math. So all we need to do is to divide through. We can have 1 all divided by 2x plus 1 all over 2 minus 3x. So this becomes 1 multiplied by the reciprocation of this, 2 minus 3x out of 2x plus 1. Now when we solve this, we have 2 minus 3x out of 2x plus 1. And this becomes our final answer. So we have 4 inverse of x equals to this. In multiplication, they can substitute a value here for x, and we can just substitute it here and get a single value. Now let's move on to the next one. We are told to find g inverse. This is Gauss inverse of x, and we write it as the outer function containing the inner function f inverse of x. So we know our outer function to be this and our inner function to be this. So wherever we see x in g inverse of x, we substitute f inverse of x, and we assume that everything here is x. So now where is our g of x inverse? This one. So we have 2x plus 1, and x stands for what? F inverse. F inverse is what? 1 over x into 1 over x, I close my bracket, plus 1, and we divide through by 2 minus 3 to bracket 1 out of x. Okay, so now the next thing to do is just to solve. These two affect only the numerator. So we have 2 times 1, this is over 1. So we have 2 out of x plus 1 all over 2 minus 3 out of x. Now the rest is simple math. So you can see g inverse or Gauss inverse of x will be equal to 2, let me rewrite that step, of x plus 1, 2 minus 3 over x. So now we can move this to the other side for simple calculation. We have 2 over x plus 1. I can separate this with a bracket, divided by 2 minus 3 out of x. I'm just going through all this step for the sake of others that have challenges. Some of us can just look at this and give the answer, but there are some of us that still need help. So I'm going through these simple steps for you out there who is struggling with these things to get the basic understanding and then help you to improve your mathematics. So improve in maths rather. So let me put this in bracket. Now your next step is to take LCM on both sides. So the lowest common multiple, we have x here, we have x here. This is over 1, this is over 1. X into this will give us 1. 1 times the numerator will give us what? 2 plus, we have 1 here. 1 into x will give us what? X plus what? X times 1 will give us what? X. We divide by 1 into x will give us what? X. X times 2 will give us what? 2x minus this times into this will give us, will cancel, you get 1. 1 times this will give us what? 3. So now you have 2 plus x out of x divided by 2x minus 3 out of x. The next step is to turn this side upside down, and we have 2 plus x out of x. You maintain the left hand side, we change this to multiplication, we turn this one, we have x out of 2x minus 3. So now next step, this can cancel this can cancel this, so I don't need to write it, but let's write a step and take care of this one. We have 1 here, 1 here. This time this will give us 2 plus x out of 2x minus 3. So now G inverse of F inverse, Golf inverse of x will be equal to 2 plus x out of 2x minus 3. So this is our final answer. Remember, Golf of x is not equal to fork of x. In the same way, the inverse of this, they will never be the same. They will never be the same. They will never be the same. The only time we can have the same is when we are working with their multiplication. So I believe this video was helpful. If this has been helpful, please subscribe to this channel at the Twitter thing, click on the notification bar, or I call it bell, so that you have more updates. In our next video, we will try to solve for the inverse of a function. We'll try to find out whether the fork of x, golf of x, or whatever function is given is odd or even. So we will give more, we will solve more examples under even and odd functions. So stay tuned for even and odd functions and composite functions, and I hope this video has been useful.